December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
The somber milestone today marks the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. More than 2,400 servicemen killed in the surprise Japanese attack, thrusting America into World War II. Now, 60 years later, America suffered a second day of infamy on September 11, 2001, reminding us all of the fresh dangers we face. And here to discuss the parallels between these two attacks is former Army advisor to the United States and NATO commanders in Afghanistan. He's Andrew Peek. Thanks for joining us, sir. What do you see were the failures of the horrific attack on Pearl Harbor 75 years ago today?
Gosh, well, you know, it was a political failure that compounded intelligence failures. So because our political leaders couldn't conceive of the Japanese as able and determined enough to attack us on our home soil, including Hawaii, it led them to dismiss a lot of the intelligence signals, like the broken Japanese diplomatic codes that indicated an attack was imminent, and that filtered down to the troops. You know, on 9/11, even though Osama bin Laden had declared war against the United States in 1996 and in 1998 reiterated his desire to attack the homeland, that intent didn't really filter into our political leaders' consciousness, and thus all these little nuggets of information weren't put together in a central clearinghouse to indicate that the light was blinking red.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Continue.
No, and you can sort of see the same thing happening today with ISIS. Clearly, there was a belief in the Obama administration that ISIS, as he infamously called it, was the JV team, and was not really posing a dire threat to the United States, and thus that led the entire military national security apparatus to kind of downplay the intelligence signals that things were getting really bad. And these intelligence signals were picked up by people like Michael Flynn, who was subsequently fired from command of the DIA for being too alarmist about ISIS.
I want to get to those signals, and this comes from the U.S. government. In fact, it comes from the House Homeland Security Committee. And this is a terror snapshot, Andrew, that we're talking about. And the new report is the U.S. is facing its highest threat of Islamic terror since September 11th. This comes as President Obama told Armed Services members last night that ISIS is not a threat to our existence. Let's take a listen.
Fascism threatened to overrun the entire world, and we had to wage total war in response. Communism threatened not only to overturn a world order, but threatened nuclear holocaust. So we had to build armaments and alliances to contain it. Today's terrorists can kill innocent people, but they don't pose an existential threat to our nation, and we must not make the mistake of elevating them as if they do.
He's also saying there was no foreign attack, terrorist attack. I think those are the president's words, on U.S. soil, but there's San Bernardino, there's Orlando. Are we underestimating the enemy, making the same mistake we saw with the attack on Pearl Harbor? I just want you, Andrew, to consider these statistics. Since 9/11, the U.S. has seen 227 homegrown jihadist cases, and throughout 2016, this year alone, ISIS conducted more than 6 attacks, including here in the United States, France, and Belgium.
No, that's right. I think where the president is going wrong is confusing the fact that ISIS and radical Islam are a different type of threat, but they're equally as severe as communism and fascism. The trouble with Islamic terrorism is not that ISIS troops are going to raise the black flag over the Capitol and occupy Washington, D.C. It's that we're all individually going to start changing our lives and our behaviors so much. And by the way, our national security interests overseas to defend ourselves from terrorism, that in the end, our nation starts to look very different than it did on September 10th, 2001.
Andrew, we are especially thankful for you and your colleagues' service to this country on this day of remembrance. Thank you for your service, Andrew.